Good evening and welcome to the second annual Alliance for Mental Wellness Forum. My name is Kathy Ortiz from the LEAD Project, and I will be your host this evening. The Alliance for Mental Wellness is a collaboration between Transitions Mental Health Association, Allen Hancock College Student Health Services, and the LEAD Project, which stands for Lived Experience, Advocacy, and Development. Tonight, we are excited to bring you from burnout to resilience, thriving in a digital world. Overnight, our lives have drastically changed, and we find ourselves ever more dependent on technology for work, school, and socializing. The risk for burnout and technology fatigue has never been higher as we try to cope with the continuing and compounding factors of social and physical isolation from the COVID-19 pandemic, economic uncertainty, and social unrest. It is our hope that this forum is not only educational, but that you take away coping tools you can practice to better manage your emotional and mental health when you're feeling burnt out and overwhelmed. Before we get started, I would like to go over a few housekeeping points with all of you. Please see the meeting controls bar at the bottom of your screen. Spanish translation and English closed captioning services are available this evening. For Spanish translation, select the language feature. And for English closed captioning, select the closed captioning feature. Tonight's Spanish translation is brought to you by the Central Coast Translation. We do encourage attendees to ask our speakers questions. There will be a Q&A session at the end of each speaker's time. To participate in the Q&A, please use the Q&A feature to submit your questions. These sessions are limited, so if your questions do not get answered, the speakers will be sharing their contact information for you to reach out after the event. Amy Kathleen Lee is an award-winning eating disorder recovery advocate, passionate motivational speaker, and suicide prevention trainer. Her powerful testimony of triumph over suicide and living with a mental health condition has been heard by over 4,000 young people across the Central Coast of California. Now for our opening speaker, Amy Kathleen Lee.
Thank you, Kathy, for that warm welcome. And thank you to the Alliance for inviting me back this evening. It is definitely an honor to be joining you and talking about this important conversation we've all been having, which is our mental health and how we're really doing in this digital age. I know for me and my family, we have had quite a different experience with a lot of different areas in our lives with school and work and online. So yeah, this is a topic that I think it's really important to have a conversation. I know it's on all of our minds, and we talk about mental health and how it affects our jobs. But let's talk a little bit about the pandemic and how it has affected all of our experiences. I'm just waiting one moment here so that I can bring up my slides here. Thank you so much. And so yeah, with the mask, and that is all kind of how we're feeling right now, isn't it? Going outside, we have to put our mask on, and I'm still not used to that yet. I don't know about you, but it's definitely taken a lot of getting used to, for sure. And the effects that we've had, it's collective in the sense that we've all experienced similar things, but we've not all experienced the same thing. Like, for example, with jobs, you know, overnight, a lot of people's jobs were just like, they lost their job. Or maybe frontline workers, for example, We're inundated with more clients or more patients. And so their experience was extremely stressful. For you parents out there, raise your hand if you're a parent. Do I have any parents with me? Okay, so are you a fan of at-home learning yet? So that has definitely changed. Having our kids learning from home has its, let's say, unique challenges to that. But also, what about the effects on our health? For example, staring at our screen all day. It affects my eyes. How about you? What about your backs, necks? Anybody else sick of sitting? So our health is affected. I get tired more. I don't know if anyone else can relate to the effects on our physical health, being online, staring at our screens. Maybe we're working from home, so we don't typically have our office, but I actually am enjoying some of the perks that come along with working from home. For example, in Zoom meetings, I don't have to wear any pants. It's like always business casual. So one of the silver linings for me, that the stress has been overwhelming, and I can acknowledge that as part of just our human experience collectively. We're feeling this pressure, even our basic needs, even those basic safety needs, or, am I going to have housing? Am I going to be able to feed my family? If something happens to me, what's going to happen to my family? The questions and the answers, we're all asking ourselves that. And I think that's why it's so important to come together and have a conversation on how do we manage through this? How do we find those silver linings? How do we take care of each other? What if stay home, stay safe, but what if home isn't safe? What if home is not the place that you would want to spend a lot of time? We're talking about toxic environments. We've had an increase in domestic violence and child abuse and trauma. So there's a lot to navigate through, but I know it's had a ripple effect across our nation. But I want you to know hope and connection have a ripple effect too. Tonight, we're going to be talking about mental and emotional health. I'm going to share with you some of my personal story. We're going to talk about self-care and how to cope. Yeah, right? Pandemic. I remember, well, I'll save that for a minute. I'm going to tell you a story about what happened in the beginning. Our wellness practices, the things we do, are so important to keep us mentally well. So to that story that I mentioned. So when the pandemic hit, I have an 8th grader, and when the pandemic hit, she was instantly learning from home. I'm a presenter, so overnight, all my work was canceled. I wasn't sure when I was going to be working again. I needed to move across the state to be with family. And I really did my best to actually continue living my life like it wasn't a pandemic. I started pushing myself really hard to well, hey, if those talks are canceled, well, then maybe I can start some new projects. And I was wondering to myself, man, why is this so hard? Well, duh, we're in a pandemic. And here I am trying to work and to live like nothing's changed, but it had. And it was affecting my mental health. So I'm someone that has lived my entire life with a brain disease called bipolar 2 disorder. Bipolar disorder, there's no cure. It's chronic. And I've learned to live with my illness and thrive. But there are things that I have to remind myself, my mental health affects everything. It is our emotional, psychological well-being. So if you are struggling right now, say with feelings or behaviors. There's nothing wrong with you. I want to validate that right now. For any of you out there that are not doing well, or not complete crisis, but just not managing, it's normal, because we're human and we're all experiencing those similar things. Taking care of our emotional health, our emotional health is that awareness that we have that we're actually feeling feelings, what to do with those feelings, right? And when you take out our self-care routines, for example, a lot of us, we leave our house to self-care. Raise your hand if you leave your house to do your self-care. The gym, maybe it's walking, maybe it's meeting your friends for tea. Anybody else? Yeah. But when we can't leave our house and we're experiencing all these different changes, we have this stress we don't know what to do with. So we try ways, and it's going to look different for everyone. For example, for me, when the pandemic started and I realized I can't do this on my own, I'm not going to be able to continue living like nothing's happening. So I reached out to my friends, and I reached out to my therapist, and I said, I am having so much anxiety right now, and I really need that extra support. Self-care is built in to my mental wellness practice. Self-care is something that we do on an ongoing basis. Coping skills are individual acts. Those are those things that we do in the moment to take care of ourselves. So I'll be sharing a couple of those things that I do that work really well for me. And again, it might look very different for you. Wellness practice, I say it's practice, but because it is, it takes practice to learn how to take care of yourself when you're not used to doing it. It seemed foreign at first to me because I was so bad at it. But once I got started, it actually became a habit. So one place that I've started in my counseling is learning grounding. Grounding is a skill, and all it is coming in to the here and the now using bodily sensations. That's it. That's all it is. It's very simple, and it's very powerful to come into the here and now using your bodily sensations. Raise your hand if you have heard of grounding. I can't see your hands, right? That's okay. Raise your hand. Grounding. Coming into the body from the here and now, feeling your feet on the floor, naming things you can hear, something you can smell. If you've experienced trauma, this can be very difficult, especially when we're experiencing hypervigilance or disassociation. But it's vital to come in back into your body. Distress tolerance. This is what all of us need to work on. I'm going to read to you some results from the U.S. National Pandemic Emotional Impact Report. Say that again, right? So they found that individuals with high levels of pandemic distress were 20 times more likely to have clinically significant signs of anxiety, 40 times as likely to have clinically significant signs of depression. So people who are in really high distress are more likely to be struggling with anxiety and depression. But if you can work on your distress tolerance, being able to be with those uncomfortable emotions, practice being there with them, the easiest way out of it is through. And it takes practice. I know it takes practice. Distress tolerance. One example is the container visualization. So some of you may have used this before. It's very simple, and your imagination drives this activity. You either have a picture in your mind where you picture a container of some sort. Could be a hat box, could be a little tissue box. And you imagine yourself placing whatever it is that's really stressing you out or worrying. You imagine placing it into the box, covering the box, and putting it away. It's a visual representation of putting away those feelings that are really hard to manage. Have you ever been overwhelmed? I know, me too. Have you ever felt like, damn, I don't know what to do with all these feelings, but I gotta go to work? If that's you, I have an idea, something that I've tried. I write down what's bothering me. I stick it in a drawer and I leave it over there. It's another thing that you might want to try for taking care of yourself. And again, it looks different for everyone. I want to do a special shout out right now to you caretakers out there. People who their job is to caretake, or maybe it's you leaders out there, parents. It is extremely important that you put on your oxygen mask. I am telling you, it's very important for you to take care of yourself, because you can't take care of anyone unless you take care of you. So self-care, it's not selfish, it's survival. And if anyone has ever told you otherwise, then they've never had to survive. So you have permission to take care of yourself no matter what you need to do. Here on the screen are some effective coping strategies. When I have self-harm urges, which do come up time to time, I keep a rubber band on my wrist. I can use that. I actually brought a piece of fruit to show you. So I actually hold a piece of frozen fruit. This isn't frozen right now. It brings me back into my body. Writing notes, listening to music, playing with clay, all different things that we can do to manage that feeling of anxiety and worry. And again, you're not doing this alone. You're not going through this alone. Please, if you're feeling lonely, or if you know someone who is, just remind them that they can tell a friend or a loved one, just, hey, I'm not doing okay. You don't have to tell them the whole story. You don't have to tell them all your personal details. Just be like, hey, I want you to know I'm not okay right now. And I don't know, I just wanted you to know. Maybe it's a therapist. You have a therapist. I love my therapists, counselors, school counselors. If you're a high school or college student, they're a great resource. You know why? Because they're not family and they're not friends, so they have a very objective view of everything going on, and they can be that safe person for you. It could be hotlines or text lines. Please don't wait till you're in crisis to call a hotline. Don't do it. I called SLO hotline when I was not in a crisis, and they were so supportive. And we talked for a few minutes, and it's just nice to tell someone. And if calling is not for you, if you'd rather text, you can do that as well. And just to leave you with a few final thoughts before we get into our conversation, I want you to know that you're stronger than you realize. I mean, if you are here right now and you've conquered all those bad days, those days where you're like, I can't do this, that's a really good track record. Keep going. Don't stop. If you want to know how I get through life living with a brain disease, it's that I continue to tell myself, don't give up. Don't stop. Keep going. You have value, you have meaning, and we're in this together. Human connection, building relationships. And that brings me to some time that I'd love to take some questions and hear from you. Share your thoughts. I am a semi-open book, so I can't tell you everything. But I would love to take your questions and to see how I can support you this evening. So here we go. Questions. I don't know if I'm open. Am I open? Okay. Here we go. There's 5 over here. Just one moment here. Let's see what's over here. Okay. All right. Any questions? Nobody has any questions for me. All right. I'm just going to wait another moment, see if anything comes in. Okay. We have one here. I get a really heavy. Okay, so when I get really stressed, I get a really heavy feeling in my chest. Oh, I hear you, and I want to cry. Would grounding help me with that? Absolutely. So thank you for asking this question. When you're feeling really stressed and you're feeling it in your body specifically, and feelings are starting to come up for you, your body's starting to feel, grounding would be very helpful. It brings you back to the current moment. Oftentimes, we're in another place in our mind. Our thoughts are somewhere else. It might be in the future. They might be with something that hasn't might happened yet. Maybe it's something that you're afraid will happen. It does help to bring us back into the current moment and say that's right now you're safe. Right now you're going to be okay. And right now you have the skills to take care of yourself. It's really scary coming back in the here and now, because what if in the past, the here and now wasn't such a good place? So coming back in the here and now, I welcome you to try that. Let me know how it goes. I'll give you my information. I'd love to hear more. How do I deal with negative thoughts? Whoa, that's a good one. Negative thoughts, the first thing I do is I recognize them. Hello, I'm having a negative thought. Yep, that was a negative thought. I recognize them, and then I decide what I'm going to do with that. Because thoughts are just thoughts. They don't own you. The thoughts just, they'll come and go. You'll get to decide what you want. You can agree with it. You can hang out with it for a while. Or you can write about it. You can talk about what they sound like with someone. Oftentimes, the negativity and the meanness, the critic in our brain, sounds a little less scary when we start talking about it to someone. But negative thoughts can be very difficult to handle. Use those skills. Thank you so much, sweetheart. What are the specific hotlines in Santa Maria or text numbers for teens? I can speak for teens, and then we can get you your specific hotline number. I use Teen Line Online for when I go into high schools. Teen Line Online, teens answer teens. How cool is that? I know, right? Like if you're a teen who you don't always want to talk to an adult, I totally get it. So Teen Line Online's awesome. Oh my gosh, yes, it affects your physical body. When we're in those spaces of feeling emotions, we can get high blood pressure. Heart rate goes up, blood goes up, we start feeling shaky. That's how I think our physical and our mental health are intertwined. Absolutely. Okay, so how do I manage the pressure to overwork? Oh, okay, so I'm an overworker, man. I'm so good at work. No idea. Such a good. I need to hold myself back and give myself permission. Permission's a big word. Permission to not try so hard, to not work so hard, because there's more to life than my projects. And actually, it's more to life than me helping people. And sometimes I have to actually hold myself back and say, you know what? We're not going to take that on. Amy, read a book. Amy, get off your website. It's just like, go do something else, but giving yourself permission. When you're an overworker too, I speak to that. It actually feels like you're being lazy. So those of you out there that work too hard and then you try to take care of yourself and you have thoughts of you're lazy, that's because your perfectionist is mad at you. There's a quote or saying that helps you through tough times. A quote or saying, you know what helps me through tough times is to remind myself who I am. I say, don't forget who you are. I have conquered suicide, eating disorder, self-harm, childhood sexual abuse, all sorts of stuff. And I'm still here, and I'm going to be here for a really long time. And I remind myself, don't forget who you are. Don't forget who you are and what you offer this world. Because there's only one you. and you're enough. You're welcome. You're welcome. I love this. I love it too. I'm having so much fun. Thank you. So the SLOW hotline is 805-783-0607, available to Santa Barbara County as well. Please don't wait till it is a crisis. Make friends with them. They're awesome. You can even ask them about resources or how to help a friend. All right, wonderful. Well, if there isn't anything else, I am going to say good night. Let me just one more time. Okay. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, all hours. You tend to work all hours of the day because here's the thing. Okay, so like my work is right next to my sofa and my TV, so it's really hard. How do you help people who are isolated? These are such great questions. I would say you can't go visit someone. That's really difficult. Feelings of isolation, it's a very real thing. I would say for people that I work with, I would try to connect in any way that you can, whether it's over the phone. I know you might not be able to go places physically, but maybe over the phone, just having conversations with people throughout the day. I've had clients sign up for my workshops just to sit with a group of people and talk and just be connected. So that might be, and it's not a support group. It's not like an official thing. It's just, hey, I'm just going to hang out with some people, hear somebody else's voice. And it compromised with COVID-19. It can be so hard. Unfortunately, unfortunately, I haven't had a chance to have to do how do you deal with students who are crying or in distress during Zoom meetings. I teach special needs. That is a great question. So I actually have not experienced that yet. I'm typically used to working in the classroom with students. I usually try to keep it as private as I can, but on Zoom it might be very uniquely different. I would like to save that question for later if we can put that in the parking lot and I can answer that afterward. So just for time's sake, I'm gonna make sure I get back to that one. Emotions. Okay, so you're feeling a lot more stronger emotions. They're stronger than usual. Okay. Well, you know what? What's really good right now is you're recognizing that your emotions and that they've intensified. So you're already on track with being connected to that. So I would say look at what are some of the tools that you've been using, if you've been using some that have helped you in the past. For me, I do distraction. I use sometimes because of my brain disease, my brain it totally lies to me. It'll go, oh wow, this is a huge deal, and it's not. So I have to distract my brain sometimes. So sometimes I'll use music or writing. If my emotions are typically really, really strong and overwhelming, I will talk to someone about them. I'll use any kind of self-care that's soothing as well. There are some things that we can do to soothe our body and soothe our minds. But when emotions are stronger than normal, yes, they are intense. Recognizing, and then please look into distress tolerance. I'm going to add the link to that book that I'm working through right now for this because I'm experiencing the same thing. So look what has happened to you, what has helped you in the past, and look into distress tolerance skills. How do you deal with other family members in the home who have negative attitude? Girl, you have no idea. Well, I set up some very healthy boundaries. Boundaries can be physical, they can be mental and emotional. So boundaries, as far as I'm going to need to have my space over here away from that person, that's always good to try to find that physical space. Oop, you know, I'm doing my PowerPoints. Okay. I try to find some physical space. I also try to limit conversations. If they try to suck me in, I'll go, you know what? I'm not able to talk right now. We'll have to pick this up later. If you're getting into a conversation with someone who yep, you're staying with them, you're in the house, it's not healthy. Limit the amount of conversation, participate a little bit in it and go, you know what, we'll have to pick this up later. I have something to do. You can lie. Be like, oh, you know what? Something just came up. Gotta go. I can totally connect with you too. Part 2 suggestions. Oh, man. Okay, so there's an after party. Just kidding. Lately, my family has been very irritable and disagreeable since we are constantly home. Oh my God. Being more compassionate and understanding with each other, I can definitely offer one. A piece of advice is step back for a moment and try to see things without sacrificing your own well-being, and is their perspective, trying to see from their perspective, kind of like what are they seeing right now. Everyone looks at this as very differently as far as being together and our mental health and why we do what we do. When we're struggling emotionally, it's been difficult and intense. Communication is so important. Even if and doing it in a way that is non-judgmental. Again, just a little perspective before we wrap it up. We're all hurting. I mean, not all of us, but to an extent. And when we're hurting, we do the best we can with what we have in the moment. And we might say things and do things, or we might take people for granted. But being flexible, honoring yourself, being flexible with your loved ones. Can I give the teen number again, please? Teen Line Online. I don't have the text number, but go on to Teen Line is one word, online. They have email, they have a website. Okay, do you have any? I love this question. Okay, hear this, everyone. Can you relate? Do you have any tips for how to fall asleep when your mind is going 1,000 miles per hour? Sometimes our minds, they get kind of like stuck in gear, and they don't want to shut off because there's a lot of stuff to think about. So when my brain is going 1,000 miles an hour, what I do is, one, I do take a special medication for my brain, because for me individually with my diagnosis, my brain doesn't like to shut off. Two, I want you to listen to what your brain's saying. Give it a little bit of attention, just kind of listen to it. I'm curious what it's saying. Does it want your attention to think about something? But when you're trying to fall asleep, it's very difficult. Anything you feel would help you, whether it be writing, reading, music. And if it's becoming a real issue, if you're really not getting the sleep that you need, then you need to talk to your doctor. Because sleep is really, really important to everyone. It's very important. And it's vital. It's just like a computer. You have to shut it off, restart it, let it do updates. You got too many tabs open, it's going to go slow. Honor your brain. Honestly, the brain gets a bad rap. You ever notice that? We complain about it all the time, but let's celebrate it a little bit. It meant that you mentioned that you dealt with an eating disorder. Do you have any advice for accepting body, particular advice on accepting the body? Okay, thank you for mentioning that. Eating disorders live in isolation. They thrive in isolation. So do any of the related challenges as far as that. And we've seen an increase in isolation, haven't we? And so it's unfortunate that we have seen an increase in people struggling with eating disorders, and in body image in particular. And we tend to try to control something, and we can't control the pandemic. We can't control what's going to happen. But oftentimes, well, what can we control? Well, maybe it's my body. Maybe if I can focus on that and what I'm eating and what I weigh, that maybe maybe that would give me some ease, but in fact, it's the opposite. Our bodies are not the problem. Our bodies aren't a problem. Our weight is our weight. It's a number. I think the underlying motivation, the relationship to the body and the weight, that's what we need to talk about. And if it's particularly taking over your mental space and you're not able to thrive, then it's time to talk to somebody about that. All right. Well, thank you so much. These were such great questions. I loved it. I loved being here with everyone. I've learned so much from you. Thank you for your questions and thank you for your time. And I'm going to give you my contact information. I'm very open and welcome to people reaching out to me. So please email me, mentalhealthtraining at Amy Kathleen Lee. You can also email me at my old Gmail account. Find me on social media. Takes a little getting used to, always watching your face on social media, but I'm there and I have some very encouraging things to share on Instagram. So please reach out that way. And we'll have to pick up on the suggestions for mindfulness and meditation at a different time. So please email me with those questions. Thank you so much again to the Alliance for Mental Wellness, Transitions Mental Health Association, and Allen Hancock College for having this incredible event and giving me this opportunity to share some life experiences. So with that, I will say good night.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you so much. Our keynote speaker, Hamza Khan, is a multi-award winning marketer, best-selling author, and global keynote speaker whose TED Talk, Stop Managing, Start Leading, has been viewed over 1 million times. He is a top-ranked university educator, serial entrepreneur, and respected thought leader, whose insight has been featured by notable media outlets such as Vice, Business Insider, and the Globe and Mail. Now for our keynote speaker, Hamza Khan.
Hola, hello. Let me just make sure everything's okay here. There we go. Perfect. Hola and hello, San Luis Obispo, North Santa Barbara, welcome. This is From Burnout to Resilience, Thriving in a Digital World. My name is Hamza Khan, and it is my absolute pleasure to speak with you this evening. I want to thank the Alliance for Mental Wellness, LEAD, TMHA, and Allen Hancock College for making this event possible. Now, before we get started, I want to inform you that this presentation could touch on some sensitive topics, and I'm really grateful for the opening speaker, Amy. That was a fantastic talk, and it really made me look inwards. And I'm glad that we began the conversation around a couple of things that might also be mentioned in my presentation. We're going to talk about death and dying. We're going to talk about self-injurious behavior, mental illness, and perhaps even suicide. And so if at any time you're upset or uncomfortable, please don't feel bad about walking away. Like Amy said, now is the time to prioritize self-care. And that is a theme that I want to continue in my presentation. At the heart of my talk is this idea of treating yourself like somebody worth taking care of, especially now during this time of great uncertainty, COVID-19. Okay, let's do a quick technology test before we move forward. Hand to heart, and I already know Amy's answer. Hand to heart, are you wearing pajamas right now? And this is a completely anonymous survey, by the way. So head over to pollev.com/HamzaKhan152, or you can text the number on your screen and let me know, are you wearing pajamas right now? So let's see what happens over here. I'm going to wait for a couple of answers to come in. Is the answer absolutely? Is the answer, I just took them off before this session? Is the answer, I've got business on top and a party on the bottom? Is the answer, no, I actually dressed up today? So go ahead and respond to that poll, and I'll know if the technology is working. We'll give it a few more seconds here. Okay, look at that. I'm sure just like I did today, Amy also dressed up. And so we're here for you. We're making sure that we're at our presentable best. But I appreciate how some of you are just like, yeah, absolutely. I'm here. I'm watching this talk. I'm watching these talks and got pajamas on. No shame whatsoever. Well, at least I know that the technology is working. So thank you so much for letting me know. So now that we've established that, let's dive right in. One more time, my name is Hamza Khan, and I'm a speaker, I'm an author, and I'm an educator. But forget about all those things on the screen for a second. First and foremost, I'm an American citizen, but I happen to be living in Canada. My parents are hardworking immigrants who came from India with very little money in their pockets. And I know that many of you are watching this today. You're looking at me and you're thinking about your own circumstances. I know, and you know that you're living significantly more difficult lives than the one that I've lived. More difficult than the one that even my parents lived. But know this, like Amy, I see you, I feel your pain, and I'm here over the next few minutes to help you as best as I can. But even long after this presentation, my commitment to you is to remain a resource to you and to help you in whatever way that I can. And we're gonna make the next 45 minutes very simple. Remember these numbers, 4, 6, and 1. That's 4 tips, 4 ideas, 6 tips, and 1 action. So if at any point you get lost in this presentation, just remember, 4 ideas, 6 tips, and 1 action. You ready? Let's dive right in. I want you to take a moment to think about something. When was the last time that you felt burned out? When was the last time that you felt so defeated by stress? Do you remember the year? Do you remember the month? Perhaps even the specific date that you realized that you just wanted to give up, that you couldn't take anymore? When was the last time that you felt so mentally, physically, and emotionally, and perhaps even spiritually drained that it affected your ability to do normal things? So go ahead and let me know at the same link, polev.com/HamzaKhan152. When was the last time you felt burned out? And as you're filling that out, I must say that I understand we have a mix of people here from across the community. And your realities are all different. And your stressors are very different. But let's see if there's any shared experiences here. So all your answers are pooling into this one chart. Most of you burned out today. Earlier this week, earlier this month, earlier this year. The burnout is very recent. I see nothing that happened a few years ago or several years ago or never. Everyone on this call, all 80 plus people on this call, have experienced burnout very recently. And it's fascinating for me to see this. Now, reflect back for a moment. On a scale of 1 to 12, when you experienced your most recent battle with burnout, how burned out did you feel? On a scale of 1 to 12. 1 was beginning to burn out and 12 was completely burned out. How burned out did you feel? So go back to that same poll, polev.com/HamzaKhan152, or you can text on the number on the screen. How burned out did you feel? Let me know. It's hard for me to see that. It's truly hard for me to see that many of you self-identify as having burned out in the latter stages of burnout, from stages 6 all the way through 12. But I'm glad that you're here with me tonight. I'm glad that I'm here with you tonight. Let's see if we can change all of this. And I want you to do me a favor, my friends. On a piece of paper, on a sticky note, on a notebook, a scrap piece of paper, maybe a blank note on your phone or laptop or tablet, however you're watching this, I want you to write down 3 things. I want you to write down, number 1, the date that you burned out, as best as you can remember it. If you can remember the specific date, great. If you can remember the month, that's okay. If you can remember the year, that's okay. Write down the date. Then write down the numbers 1 through 12. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Write that out. And then finally, write down the letters WWADD. So I'll give you just a few seconds to get that done. One more time, the date that you burned out, then the numbers 1 all the way through 12, and then finally the letters WWADD. Now you're confused about all of this. Don't worry. I promise you that by the end of this presentation, everything is going to make sense. That is my promise to you. So moving along, I have to ask, are you on Instagram? And I suppose a more appropriate question, especially considering that I can't see you, is are you on Instagram right now? And even if you are, I can't see you. But if you are, you could do me a favor. I'm at Hamza K on Instagram. You can follow me and I'll follow you right back. I promise. And if you want, you can give me a couple of likes on some photos that you like. I promise to return the favor. But my point is that what you're going to see, if you're seeing me on Instagram, I'm at Hamza K on Instagram, if you're on my profile, you can see that as of lately, I'm happy. And life before COVID-19 was quite good. But then in March 11th, things took a turn. And for a time, I lost most of my income. And things became very stressful. Not only that, but if I have some time at the end, I want to tell you a very personal story about my father who suffered a very scary health incident at the beginning of COVID. But thank God, everybody's okay. Things turned around for me. But what you see at the top of Instagram is just the top of my feed. Of course, things get more interesting once you start scrolling down. Once you start going all the way down, my feed doesn't look as happy and as cheerful. I want to show you, my friends, the most stressful year of my life, the year 2014. All I did in 2014 was work. I felt a lot of pressure. My finances weren't good, so I worked hard. I was mentally weaker than I am right now, so I worked hard. I wasn't feeling happy, so I worked hard. My relationships weren't good, so I worked hard. I thought that working and toiling and struggling was the answer to my problems. At the beginning of the year, I posted this photo. I know it's not the best photo, and this is back when people used to take a lot more selfies. So in 2014, at the beginning of the year, in January of 2014, I took the photo on your screen. So that's me at the beginning of the year. Do you want to see what I look like at the end of the year? By the end of the year, in December of 2014, I looked like a completely different person. Two very different Hamzas. By the end of 2014, the fresh-faced Hamza on the left of your screen looked like my last post. The tired, unkempt, wrinkled Hamza with a blank stare and bloodshot eyes. By the end of 2014, I was absolutely defeated. And for all of the sharing that I did on social media about how hard I was working, how productive I seemed, to be honest, I have very little to show for it. It's a very embarrassing year in my life. This idea of working hard, of pushing beyond your limits, is a dangerous one. And Amy alluded to that in her last talk. Even in the middle of a pandemic, some people are saying things like the thing you're seeing on your screen. And it says, if you don't come out of this quarantine with either a new skill, starting what you've been putting off, like a new business, more knowledge, you didn't ever lack the time, you lacked the discipline. And when I see things like this, I get really upset because not only is it insensitive, it's disrespectful. It comes from a place of privilege. For those people who have the ability to persist, to see the opportunity in this time, they say things like this, but they fail to acknowledge the realities that all of you and myself are experiencing every single day during COVID-19. You're not just working from home. It's not that simple. Some of you are frontline workers. Some of you are experiencing food insecurity. Some of you have childcare issues. For many of you, your basic needs are not being met. And on top of that, we're in the middle of a global pandemic, trying our very best to cope. To say that we're all the same, that we're all working from home is a gross, inaccurate oversimplification. Every single day, we are wrestling with a chronic, ambient, existential, overwhelming stress. But somehow, like Amy said, our brains are telling us, it's okay, you're okay. But we're not okay. And you might be tempted to brush these feelings under the rug, to ignore the root problems as I did, and respond with the phrase, hey, life's crazy. How many times have you said that during COVID-19 when people ask you, how are you doing? Oh, life's crazy. Things are crazy right now. It's not a good phrase because it trivializes the experience of those of us, including myself, who have struggled and are struggling with mental health problems, real mental health problems. But it's something we casually say to dismiss the grim realities all around us. Let me tell you, my friends, we're not okay. If you feel like life has been crazy as of late, that's the universe telling you to pull your car over and check the engine. Because guilty as charged, I have used the problematic phrase, it's crazy to describe my life. When asked how work was going, I'd always reply, it's crazy. When asked how my life was going, it's crazy. How was my relationships going? It's crazy. It's crazy became my response to everything that was happening in my life. Life is crazy is how I would describe everything that happened in the year that I burned out in 2014. But then in December of 2014, after saying that phrase over and over and over again, things took a turn. This month, in this year, serves for me as a painfully embarrassing reminder that there is a real consequence to pushing beyond your limits. And that's something we're all struggling with at some level during this unprecedented time. At the beginning of 2014, I promised myself a trip around the world. I said this was going to be my reward for a year of working really hard. I worked inhuman hours to pay for this one trip. From 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 7 days a week, I worked every single day for 11 months. And I worked and I worked and I worked. And I neglected my family, I neglected my friends, I neglected my health. All I did was add more and more and more stress to my life. And then it came the day to take my trip in December of 2014. And would you believe what happened? The day that I was supposed to leave on that trip, I got cold feet. It happened right when I was about to go to the airport. At first, my chest became very tight. And my breathing became shorter. Then my knees buckled. I felt hot and I passed out. And I woke up with just barely minutes until my flight was about to depart. But I couldn't do anything. My body had just completely shut down. And I looked at that clock, and that clock said 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All the flights that I booked, all the trains that I booked, all the cars, the hotels, the Airbnbs, that whole trip didn't happen. I felt nauseous. I threw up. I instantly became sicker than I had ever been before in my life. And for the next 30 days, all I did was stay at home. I was essentially quarantined at home for the next 30 days. This is the first time in my life anything like this had happened to me. Now, when I spoke to doctors about what had happened, they all said that I exhibited symptoms of a panic attack, a complete system failure, which made me as weak as I was, and therefore as susceptible to getting as sick as I did. In fact, 2 of the doctors that I spoke to said that I suffered a silent heart attack based on what I shared with them. Can you imagine? In my mid-20s, suffering a silent heart attack? I couldn't believe it. I was so confused. How did this happen? This happens to everyone else, doesn't happen to me. I'm in the prime of my health. I work hard, I take care of myself, right? How could it happen to me? Because so much of my identity, up until that point, was tied up in being productive, in being useful to my family. And here I was listening to doctors telling me that I could no longer work at the levels that I was working at, because if I did, it could be fatal the next time. My friends, I had some very tough questions to answer in the cold of 2014, in December of 2014. I had to ask myself, what exactly happened? Why did it happen? Is something wrong with me? Could I have prevented this? How come I didn't see this coming? Was this inevitable? And the biggest question, and a question that I hope is being answered for each and every single one of you tonight, is, am I alone? And let me tell you, between Amy's story and my story, we're hardly alone. And I realized this when I discovered the story in December of 2014 of a boy my age who had a similar experience. At the time, the exact same time that I was going through burnout, there was a boy named Eretz Morhart in the United Kingdom who was working the same hours that I was working, but he took it further than I did. He neglected his sleep. He would go home from work, he would shower, he would change, and then he would go right back to work. Now, in the United Kingdom, they have roundabouts, right? You've all seen a roundabout at least once or twice in your life. In his industry, they had something known as the magic roundabout. And this was generally accepted as something you did if you wanted to succeed. This is how you showed your boss that you deserve to be there. You worked 24, 48, 72 hours in a row. He felt a lot of pressure to succeed. To get his job, Eretz Morhart had to beat 1,500 other people. If you do the math, that's a 0.13% chance. Now, I'm sure that all of you watching and listening today, you feel very lucky to have whatever opportunities you have to work. Whether you're an essential worker, whether you're a housekeeper, whether you're studying in college, no matter what you do, I'm sure that at some level you feel pressure to be the best that you can be. But look at what happened to Eretz Morhart. After staying up for 72 hours in a row, the camera outside his house saw him enter on August 15th, but instead of showering, changing, and going back to work, he didn't leave his house. Concerned his coworkers, they called the police. Morhart was never late for work. Something felt wrong. The police went to his house, and what they found was terrifying. Eretz Morhart was found slumped over in the shower with the water still running, but without a pulse. The coroner concluded that Eretz Morhart's fatigue was a trigger for the seizure that ultimately killed him. When I read that story, I had the exact same reaction that all of you are having right now. Oh my God. There's something wrong. You and I have felt it for a very long time. Let me tell you what that is. I discovered when I had exited from my big battle with burnout that there's actually a path that people travel to get to where they get, known as the 12 stages of burnout. And I want you to turn back to your note. Turn back to the note that you created at the beginning of this talk. And I want you to circle every stage you've been through as I walk through it. Are you ready? Let's start with stage number 1. It always starts the same way. My friends, you take on more and more responsibility. You're worried about your family's future. You're worried about not being able to put food on the table. You're worried about destruction to property happening in the United States right now. You're worried about COVID-19. You're worried about the economy. You're worried about an impending recession. But what happens? Your fear motivates you to take action. And that is step 1. That is how you enter into the cycle of burnout. Then comes stage 2. You work harder. You can't switch off. You're working nonstop. You're checking your phone all the time. You're overwhelmed by the news. People around you, your boss, your friends, your family, they've asked you to cut back. From that point onwards, it starts to get lower and lower. Stage 3 is neglecting your needs. This looks like disrupted sleeping, disrupted eating, a lack of social interaction. You're no longer feeling normal at this point. Then comes stage 4, a displacement of conflicts. You push your problems away. You feel threatened, you feel panicky, you feel jittery. You start putting aside challenging situations. Rather than deal with the problems in your life, you simply avoid them. Then comes stage 5, revision of values. You ignore your family, you ignore your friends, you stop feeling joy. The things that matter to you stop mattering to you. Okay, we're halfway there. Stage 6 is a denial of emerging problems. By now, it's harder to have normal relationships because you're always negative, you're always aggressive. You begin to blame work, the government, or other people for your problems in an effort to cover up your role in getting to this point. Now, that's not to say that work and the government and other people can't contribute to your situation, but now when you know the science of what is happening to you, you can take more responsibility for the things that are within your control. Stage 7 is withdrawal. This far into the cycle, my friends, your social life is small or non-existent. You become isolated. Your phone becomes your best friend. You're hooked on entertainment and social media, mindlessly scrolling for hours on end. And worse, you feel the need to turn to alcohol and drugs to deal with your life stressors. Stage 8 is odd behavioral changes. What was only visible to maybe just yourself is now visible to everyone around you. Changes in your behavior have become obvious, and your friends and your family and your coworkers, they're all very concerned. You give in to your demons. You find comfort in drugs. You find comfort in alcohol. Your life, as you would describe it, in hindsight, has become an absolute mess. Stage 9 is depersonalization. You've lost your sense of self, and you can no longer perceive your own needs. Now look, if you've made it this far, you're probably not even aware that there's a problem. I've been here before, and I didn't realize that I was going through it until months later, because what had happened is my reality around me had shifted. Stage 10 is inner emptiness. You feel empty on the inside. And to overcome this, you depend on risky activities such as overeating, sex, alcohol, and drugs. You dread waking up and taking on the day. You just lie in bed. You turn off your alarm. You hit snooze. You don't want to wake up. You know what I'm talking about. You've been here before. Stage 11 is depression. It's characterized by feeling lost and unsure. You're exhausted all the time, and the future feels dark and the future feels bleak. Many of my friends and many of my family are here at this stage right now, and it's really been weighing on me. At some level, we're all struggling with the pressures brought about by COVID-19, and that could lead us all the way to stage 12, full-blown burnout syndrome. This includes total mental, physical, emotional, and even spiritual collapse. Here's where you absolutely need immediate and full medical attention. So with that being said, if you're currently at stage 6 or higher, my suggestion to you would be immediately after this presentation is done, or probably sooner, that you get professional help. And I want you to look at the numbers on your screen. And I want you to take a picture. I want you to take a screenshot and remember all of these. These will be helpful to you. There's no shame in asking for help during a time like this. I'm telling you, even though I'm the speaker and I appear to be confident and I have it all together, the truth is, I myself have used numbers just like this very recently, right here in the pandemic. Nobody is immune to this. We are all experiencing this together. So please, I urge you, if you are at stage 6 or later, please take advantage of the numbers on your screen. One more time, here are the 12 stages of burnout. Now, I want you on your note to mark down all the stages that you've experienced, from stages 1 all the way through 12. How far did you make it? One more time. Mark down as far as you made it in all of the 12 stages of burnout. And then what I want you to do is let me know and let everyone else know on this call how far you've made it. So use the same poll, pollev.com/HamzaKhan152, or you can text the number. Now, I can't stress this enough. This is not a race. This is not a competition. But what I'm hoping that you experience in seeing this graph is a normalization of something that you might have believed up until this point was an individual problem. But let me assure you, my friends, you are not alone. Trust me. Look at this. If you are looking at this right now, know that there are several people out of the 80 plus people on this call who have walked the same path that you're walking on right now. So wherever you're at over there, you're not alone. There are other people here right now on this call watching me, participating in this poll, who have been exactly where you are, who are exactly where you are. You're not alone. You are not alone. In the cold winter of 2014, I faced the truth. Like so many of us, my life, I was predisposed to burnout because of how I was living. To be honest, my mind wasn't right. And if I didn't change my approach, I would burn out again and again and again. But why was I burning out in the first place? What was so different about my situation? Well, it turns out that I'm not much different than any one of you right now, or anyone else in the United States or in the world, especially now during COVID-19. At some level, all of us, everybody who participated in that poll, everybody watching right now, we're all struggling with the underlying problem of burnout. Stress. Stress is the silent killer. In researching and speaking about burnout, I have been very lucky to travel the entire world. And let me tell you that every single person on this planet, from Australia to Bulgaria, everyone struggles with this at some level. And it's not just people like you and I. It happens to even the stars. It happened to UFC fighter Robert Whittaker, who left at the top of his career, at the top of his mixed martial arts career, because he was burned out. It even happened to a famous DJ like Avicii, who tragically ended his own life because he was burned out. When people are stressed beyond what they can bear, no matter how they look on the surface, they experience burnout. San Luis Obispo, North Santa Barbara, these are bad times, and you don't need me to tell you that. You know this. You're on the ground. You see it yourself. In the United States of America, we're struggling with burnout. We're struggling with anxiety. We're struggling with distraction. Well, how bad is it? Let's talk about it. Right now, we're dealing with three intertwined problems. Number one, the pressures of COVID-19. We're worried about our health. We're worried about our safety. We're worried about the lives of our loved ones. We're oversaturated with news stories. Then there's the looming elections in just 12 days, I believe. I can't even begin to understand how stressed you are because of what's happening in the States. You know, I'm up here in Canada, and I'm worried about the debate that's happening right now. Social media must be so overwhelming these days. Every time you log on to Facebook, every time you log on to Instagram, Twitter, even Snapchat, it's impossible not to see something that makes you feel upset. But then there's the bigger problem that nobody's talking about enough: the future of the economy, and therefore your livelihood. But wait, it actually gets worse. Studies are showing that if you are a woman, if you are a Latinx member, COVID-19 is affecting you more negatively than anyone else, even if you're Black. If you're a woman, Black, or Latinx, COVID-19 is affecting you worse than anyone else. On average, you are reporting higher levels of stress, higher instances of mental health issues, and higher economic despair. COVID-19 is not good for anyone, but it's certainly not good for you if you identify as any of the three on that screen right now. It's actually affecting you worse. And members of the San Luis Obispo and North Santa Barbara communities, if you are struggling to take care of your physiological and safety needs, if you're struggling to put food on the table, if you're struggling to pay your bills, if you're struggling to protect yourself and your family, if you've been neglected by the government, if you're being ignored by the media, if you're invisible to the powers that be, then this time is difficult for you in ways that break my heart. I can't even begin to imagine what it must be like to be you right now. But I know what it's like to experience post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. That feeling when something is stressful and painful, and you experience it in the present, but it reminds you of something stressful and painful that happened before. You know, maybe 2019 was a good year for you, like it was for me. Maybe you were making progress. You were clean, you were turning your life around, you were meeting your needs. And then suddenly on March 11th, society stopped. And those feelings crept back up. You remembered, whether you like it or not, what it was like to be in pain. The sort of pain that you've been trying so hard to escape. The World Health Organization has called stress the underlying problem in these bad times. They've called it the health epidemic of the 21st century. Now I want to show you something. And you're wondering if I froze, but I didn't. I simply paused for 13 seconds. In the time that I was frozen, that I had paused, whether you believe it or not, 70 people around the world died from stress. 70, not 17, 70. 70 people around the world died from stress. And you heard that right, they died. And I'm having the exact same reaction that you're having right now. This is unacceptable. But it gets worse. In fact, in some parts of the world, they have a name for death by stress, death by overwork. In Japan, they call it karoshi. In China, they call it guolausi. Every day, 1,600 people die from working too hard, from being stressed out. Now, in 2019, just last year, the World Health Organization upgraded the definition of burnout, and they called it a medical condition. This is how they defined it: a syndrome resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. But this definition goes beyond the workplace. It describes feelings of energy depletion and exhaustion. It describes feelings of negativity and cynicism. It describes a lack of productivity. And who isn't feeling any of these during our times? It doesn't matter who you are. You're all feeling stress, which in turn is causing you to feel performance pressure. So what do we do? Now, before we flip this conversation and talk about solutions, let me pause for a second and just speak to you directly. It's okay to not be okay. Before I offer any resilience advice, let me repeat. It's okay to not be okay. These are unprecedented times. Nobody saw this coming. And we're all experiencing higher than usual levels of stress. I mean, frankly, I'm amazed that any of us are productive right now. Between me up here talking about burnout and you on this Zoom call, I'm probably burning you out right now a little bit. You have to admit it. So what do? I want you to hang in there. I promise you we are going to get through this. In the next 20 minutes, I'm going to help you get through this. Let's go a little deeper into why you're feeling the way you're feeling. In my research about burnout, I discovered what's known as the castle factors. These are things that are outside of your control. These are happening all around you. You see this on the news, you see this on social media, you feel this in your neighborhood, you see this in your workplace. You see that competition is increasing. You see that you're feeling more and more lonely and isolated. You see that society is telling you that you're not good enough. And worse is society is telling you that you don't belong. And then technology, like Amy talked about, has become so addicting. Some reports are saying that it's more addicting than alcohol, and you can't seem to get away from your phones. And how about the epidemic of loneliness? Let's talk about that for a second. It's gripping the world. It seems that everyone is well connected. You have all these friends and followers and people on social media, but how many of you are truly connecting? How many people are truly creating valuable relationships that are making you happy instead of making you angry and bitter and resentful? And finally, the economy is in a downward spiral no matter what anyone says. It feels like we're never going to get out. It feels like we're never going to move forward. Now, in response to what's happening all around us, we start to believe 5 things. And it's human nature. We start to believe in 5 things. These are what's known as the Pepsi myths. Has nothing to do with the drink, though. We believe that we aren't making enough progress. We believe that we're not using our time well. We believe that there's always room for improvement. We believe that we're not happy enough. We believe that we're not valuable enough, that we're not good enough at our jobs. Now, when Castle and Pepsi are combined, we feel what's known as performance pressure, which I talked about just a few slides earlier. And that causes us to feel like we are not enough. And when we don't feel like we're enough, we take on more and more and more stress, and we push and push and push through pain. Hopefully at this point, you can understand the cycle. You can understand the problem here. We behave when we don't feel like we're enough, like a phoenix. And you might have encountered a phoenix. You might have seen it in some movies like Harry Potter, for instance, or you might have read about it in a book or in a comic book. You might have heard about it in a song. It's this mythical creature that burns bright. It has flames all around it, but then it burns out and it dies and it turns into ashes and it hopes that one day it'll come back. This is what Phoenix burnout looks like. It's persistent. You do the same things over and over and over again, expecting different results. It's helpless. You cut off support, believing that only you can make things happen. It's overcompensating. You make up for losses in other areas of your life with more and more stress. It's explosive. You become intense, aggressive, and off-putting. It's negative. Nothing is satisfying anymore. You start to give up. It's impatient. You grow detached from your society. And it's extreme. You allow your priorities to manage you and not the other way around. The television, the phone, they all control your life. You're overwhelmed all the time. You're worried all the time. You're one stressful event away from losing it. To you, crazy is normal. But let me tell you that crazy is counterproductive. When you're stressed, your body sends blood away from your brain to other parts of your body. Doctors call this the amygdala hijack. In other words, you're stupid when you're stressed. You can't make good decisions when you're stressed. Stress, if you're not careful, will lead to burnout. The goal, my friends, is to be peaceful, is to be happy, is to be calm. Remember, in the wise words of Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu, the flame that burns twice as bright burns half as long. So here's my fourth and final idea. There's a law in nature which gives us a hint about how to solve the problem of burnout. It's called the Yerkes-Dodson law, and it's on your screen right now. It basically shows this. If there's too little challenge or too little difficulty, your motivation is low. And if there's too much challenge or too much difficulty, your motivation is also low. But when there's just enough challenge, when there's just enough difficulty, you can be at your best. You can rise to the occasion and you can do your best. To get to that point, we have to cut out the things in our life that are distracting us, the things that are unnecessarily competing for our attention. And it requires coming back to the essentials. Now, it's a bizarre turn of events. It took a global pandemic, COVID-19, for us to discover this truth. One of the unexpected benefits of this time has been a return to what is essential, a rediscovery of what matters and what doesn't matter. And I know that what I'm about to say will seem counterintuitive at first. Some of you will scratch your heads and be like, Hamza, you don't know what you're talking about, but trust me. Trust me, trust me, trust me. We have to prioritize calm over crazy. It doesn't have to be crazy anymore. And don't let people tell you otherwise. Just like Amy said earlier, don't let people tell you otherwise. You have to start by removing the word crazy from your vocabulary, not just because it's an insensitive and inappropriate word, but if you remove it as a default response to everything else happening in society, it'll force you to look at the root causes, the root problems that are causing you to burn out. Now, these, my friends, are the last 6 tips that I want to leave you with. They are the result of years of working with the system, years of research that has resulted in something that is being used by thousands of people around the world, from youth and early talent to high-powered Fortune 500 CEOs. And it's about 2 things. It's about recovery and it's about growth. And I'm going to walk you through it over our last 10 minutes together. It is designed to reduce the probability, the likelihood of stressful experiences in your life, as well as reduce the impact that stressful experiences can have on your life. Because it really comes down to that. You experience burnout when there's too many unexpected and stressful things that happen in your life, and when you don't have the necessary resilience to cope with it. Let's change that. In my book, The Burnout Gamble, I present around 24 different strategies, which I'm going to include in a PDF that the organizers can share with you afterwards. But for now, I'm going to give you the 6 that I think are the most relevant to what we're going through. The first of the 6 strategies is this. Number 1, drop non-essential priorities. Reduce the immediate sources of stress in your life. Let's start over here. Okay, we all know that social media is incredibly addicting. And especially on a day like this, on a night like this, when the presidential debate is happening at the same time, you're probably feeling a lot of anxiety. You're curious to know what your family, what your friends are saying. So you open up Facebook, you open up Instagram, but in order to get to your family and your friends, you have to scroll and see other people's posts. And before you know it, you forgot why you were on social media in the first place and you've been there for an hour. And then you eventually watch the debate later tonight and you're more stressed and you don't know why. Because what has happened with just one distraction is you've introduced numerous stressors into your life. Every post, every notification, every message is one more thing that your brain had to think about. One more thing that your brain had to deal with. And what would happen if you just said no? What would happen if you didn't pick up your phone? What would happen if you didn't check your notifications? What would happen if you didn't check your social media? Well, maybe, just maybe, you'd be able to preserve some of your precious time, some of your precious energy, and some of your precious attention. Especially when you're stressed, be ruthless about what occupies your attention. Next, reconnect with your reasons for living and being. Manage your priorities, not the other way around. Don't let your priorities manage you. When you're going through burnout, you often lose sight of what's important in your life. Return to something that grounds you. Family and faith are my go-to. Spend time with your children. Read the Bible. Remember why you're on earth. Remember why you matter. If you're lonely, if you don't have any loved ones, turn to any of the organizers here tonight. Call any of the hotlines that I shared. Even when you feel like you don't matter, trust me, you do matter. Now it's time to prevent yourself from falling back into patterns that led you to burnout in the first place. Assemble boundaries around your most precious resources. This tip is about protecting your peace and protecting your happiness. You know, as human beings, we're very bad at knowing when to stop doing something. We're not good at leaving jobs that are mistreating us. We're not good at leaving relationships that are hurting us. We're not good at listening to our bodies when they're clearly saying we need to slow down, we need to stop. That's why I'm asking you, in advance of anything that you do, decide how that thing is going to end. Let's use tonight as an example. Right, you might have been interested in watching the debate, but let's say you're a member of the Latinx community and you've experienced racism in your community recently, and I'm sorry if you have. You're curious to know which of the two presidential candidates will stand up for you and stand up for your rights. Well, decide in advance, because you know it's going to be a stressful debate. Decide when you're going to stop watching the debate. Will you watch it until the end? That's a time-based. Will you watch the whole debate? That's unit-based. Will you watch it until you're tired? That's energy-based. Will you watch it until you hear the answer you're looking for? That's results-based. Or will you turn it off when you feel like it? That's feelings-based. You're in control whether you think about it or not. You get to decide your exposure to these stressors. It's just a television. It's just a phone. It's just a laptop. It's just a tablet. It doesn't have any power over you. You have all the power. You turn it on. You plug it in. You decide when anything on that screen comes into your brain, not the other way around. And in fact, that's what you did tonight. You had a choice. You could have not come to this session. You could have watched the debates, but you chose instead to do something to invest in your long-term health and well-being. And I applaud you and I commend you for that. In the future, don't feel guilty about turning off your television, turning off your social media. You have to protect what's up here and you have to protect what's in here. Next, gain a healthier perspective to boost your mental health. Not all stress is the same. You know, when we learned stress growing up, we only knew one definition of stress. We only knew the definition that is distress, stress that causes pain and suffering and trouble and danger. But there's a difference. There's two types of stressors. eustress, eustress, the first definition, is stress that is healthful. It's good for you. It gives you feelings of fulfillment. It's like the stress of doing a hard day's work. It's like the stress of buying new clothes for your children for school. And then distress is all the other bad stress. It's like the stress of, is my grandmother going to get COVID? Will she be able to survive? Instead of the first definition of stress, try the second one. When you're faced with a stressful situation, ask yourself, is this good stress or is this bad stress? Because studies show that simply rethinking what a stressor is enough to change your bodily reaction to the stressor. I know this, I've done this, I do this all the time. I'm an introvert. I actually, believe it or not, I don't like public speaking. I love public speaking when it's happening, but the idea stresses me out. But then I remember, hey, Hamza, you get to speak with some people tonight who need to hear your message. And you're going to hear their questions afterwards. And they're going to ask you questions that'll connect their hearts together, that'll make you feel good about the work that you do. And simply rethinking about tonight made me arrive to here fresh, eager, and ready to give you as much information as I can. So if you can apply this same principle to other aspects of your life, beautiful things can happen. Now we're almost there. Hang in there. Strategy number 5 is opening your heart to compassion and self-care. It's the small and consistent actions that matter in the long run. If there's anything I want you to take away from this talk today, I wanted to be this one thing. Treat yourself like somebody worth taking care of. The way you take care of your children, the way you take care of your parents, the way you take care of your work, take care of yourself, please. It's not selfish, like Amy said, to practice self-care. It's not lazy, it's not unproductive. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It is actually essential to beating burnout. Turn off your phone, go for a walk, take a longer bath, sleep a little longer. Do whatever it takes to reduce your stress because you're already familiar with what happens through my story, through Amy's story, even through your own story. Stress almost always leads to burnout if we're not careful. Fill up your energy buckets. Restore your physical, restore your emotional, restore your mental, and restore your spiritual energy. Because you can't pour from an empty bucket. Now, I'm going to take a second over here and drink some water. I need to actually restore my own bucket over here. I realize I've been speaking for nearly an hour. While I drink some water, can you let me know how you are practicing self-care during COVID-19? How are you filling up your energy buckets? So I see a few answers over here already. You guys were very fast. Wow. This is beautiful. I'm just going to drink some water here real quick. So I see a couple of great answers here. I see hiking, gardening, singing, family, drink wine is appearing a few times over here. Amazing. And what I want you to do, if you haven't practiced self-care during COVID-19, take a picture of this, take a screenshot. These are some good ideas. All of these are great things that you can do to ground yourself, like Amy said, to come back to the center. I love this. Thank you so much for participating, by the way. That brings me to my final strategy, my final idea, my final tip. Nurture resilience. It's time to build up the muscle that will strengthen your resistance to future stressors. See, a few years ago, some friends and I got together and we began a journey. We began a writing process to find out if there was a secret to success. We reverse engineered the careers of nearly 175 different high performers. We looked at the likes of Barack Obama, Ed Sheeran, LeBron James, and even Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. And what we found through all of their stories was that these are people who credited the value of resilience with their ability to succeed. They had invested in their ability to adapt to and to withstand stress. And all of you know what I'm talking about. Your lives are full of moments of despair. Your lives are full of moments of hopelessness. You've experienced failure. You've experienced dead ends. You've experienced setbacks. And every time you overcame them, you became stronger, didn't you? You did. And the next time that you face something difficult, it didn't hurt as much, didn't it? If we're intentional about this process, if we try to figure out what exactly happened in those moments, we can use this to our advantage. In times of peace, we can intentionally increase the difficulty in our lives and prepare for times of unrest. And then in times of unrest, like right now during COVID-19, we can look for the silver linings and we can change our body's reaction to the stressors by seeing this stress as necessary to get to something better. Are you able to see how everything is in your control? No matter how COVID-19 is affecting you, you can actually make this work for you. Either way, we're going to come out of this time stronger, not weaker. I believe that sincerely. And when you really think about it, resilience is all about sustaining productivity over time. And that is what is at the heart of today's message. Consistency over intensity. In the face of a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world, drop the non-essential priorities like news and social media distractions. Reconnect with your reasons for living and being, like family, like faith. Assemble boundaries around your most precious resources, like your time, like your energy, like your attention. reframe distress as eustress, and finally open up your heart to compassion and self-care. Treat yourself, like I've said numerous times, like someone worth taking care of. And when you do all of this, you'll automatically prioritize being calm over being crazy. And this is the one and only action I want you to take. The next time you're faced with distress, the next time you're faced with unrest, ask yourself, what does a calm approach to this look like? Being calm is an antidote to burnout. When you are calm, you will know what to say no to. When you're calm, you will anticipate stress. When you are calm, you will know what is stressing you out. When you are calm, you will focus on the important things. When you are calm, you will know you will know when to slow down or when to stop. When you are calm, you will prioritize self-care. This will happen automatically when you ask yourself, what does a calm version of this look like? And in the end, believe it or not, you're going to get more things done. After all, nothing works if nothing works. Being calm, however, requires being comfortable with the word enough. And let me tell you, all of you watching today, you are enough. You have always been enough. You will always be enough. And don't let anyone tell you otherwise. The only way to get more done, believe it or not, is to have less to do. And especially in the middle of a chaotic situation like the one that we're all experiencing today, that requires a focus on the right things. And the right thing to do is to do right by yourself. Only then can you do right by your friends and your family, and only then can you do right by your fellow Americans. To everyone on this call today, I urge you to do the right thing, to get the right things done. Not everything, just the right things. Now, one last favor. Look at that note, look at that date at the top of your note. That's the date that you burned out the last time, isn't it? I want you to decide right here tonight that that is the last time you're going to burn out the way that you did. Because you are now equipped with the ideas, with the tips, and with the one action that you need to harness your fire. Such that the next time you're faced with crushing adversity in the future, you're going to ask yourself, WWADD, what would a dragon do? And then you're going to do that thing. You're the dragon, San Luis Obispo. You're the dragon, North Santa Barbara. And unlike the phoenix, you're actually in control of the fire. You get to decide how and when and where you're going to use that fire. Are you going to use it to warm up your homes? Excellent. Are you going to use it to motivate yourselves? Excellent. Are you going to use it to spread light in these dark times? Excellent. Don't lose your fire. This country, this world, we all need you at your best. We all need you to burn bright and not out. Alliance for Mental Wellness, LEAD, TMHA, Allen Hancock College, thank you so much for your time, for your energy, and for your attention. Thank you to Denise, Clara, Kathy, Irene, Amy, Christina, everyone involved in the production of this session. My name is Hamza Khan, and this has been an absolute honor. Thank you so much, and I wish you all the very best. Now, I believe we have a few minutes left for a few questions. I will turn it back over to our moderators, and we'll go from there. Okay, so I think we have a few questions. Okay, so I'm just going to wait for a few questions to come in here, but while I'm waiting for these questions to come in, I'm actually just going to go up over here and see if anybody has typed anything. So Jill Bolster White said no yoga pants. All right, got you. Reina Arroyo said you were at stage 12, and Amy said that's so me. And I love how you've all answered with things that you do to prioritize self-care during these times. Walking with my dog, walks at the park. You know, and somebody over here, Sharon Gallagher, I'm sleeping an extra hour, eating only organic and eating grass-fed beef and wild-caught fish and drinking half my body weight in water. It's a good start. Well, Sharon, diet is so critical. Diet is so important because what is in your gut flora, is a direct reflection of what happens in your head as well. And so if you have the ability to afford healthy food, to afford power food as they call it, more power to you. But for those of us who are struggling with food insecurity, try your very best if you can to at least cut back on sugar and carbs. That could be a huge game changer for you. Okay, so one other question is, how do you set goals that don't take over everything when you don't reach that goal so you don't get disappointed? Okay, that's an interesting question, right? How do you set goals that don't take over everything when you don't reach that goal, you don't get disappointed? I'm trying to think of a good example here. One isn't coming right away, but would you rather have a whole bunch of priorities open up that you're not completing? And I know that, I'm in that situation right now too. I'm working on, several things at any given time, but none of them are actually moving forward because our attention is a very limited precision instrument tool. If we focus on one thing, if we narrow our focus, if we focus all of our time, energy, and attention on one thing, that thing will probably get done. In fact, there's a strategy that I learned not that long ago called the 90-90-1 rule, 90-90-1 rule. And it basically works like this. If you want to get anything done for 90 days, 90 days, for the first 90 minutes of that day, work on that one thing. So let's say you want to get a job somewhere and you just haven't had the time, you haven't had the energy to actually work on your resume and put in the applications. Well, try this out for 90 days, for the next 90 days, for the first 90 minutes of every single day. And why I say the first 90 minutes, because that is when you are the sharpest. Just work on your resume and work on applying for jobs. And in those 90 days, you will make much more progress towards building your resume and applying for jobs than the current approach that you're taking. So try that out. Try to limit your focus on things that will actually move your priorities forward. Any other questions, folks? Okay, no more questions have come in. No problem whatsoever. If there are no questions, I realize I've been speaking for quite a while over here and I've given you a lot of information. It's a lot to take in. So I totally understand that there are no more questions. I just want to say to everyone again, one more time, thank you so much for your time, energy, and attention, and go out there and burn bright, not out.
We would like to thank both Hamza Khan and Amy Kathleen Lee for their wonderful work and insight. We would like to thank the Alliance for Mental Wellness for making this forum possible. And lastly, we would like to thank you, the audience, for taking the time to be with us tonight. Without community support, this forum would not be possible. We have a short survey that will pop up on your screen. Please take the time to fill this out. Your feedback really does help us know how to better our forum. If you would like any more information on local mental health resources, our speakers, or the LEAD project, please drop those questions in the comment section of the survey. You can also visit our website at www.allianceformentalwellness.com. Thank you. Stay safe, stay well, and have a good night.